Title of my story is What God Has Put Together. Mark 10:9 from the King James Version reads, What therefore God has joined together, let not man put asunder. From the New Revised Standard Version, it reads, Therefore what God has joined together, let no one separate. This is the famous verse that is said during wedding ceremonies. When I read this verse and when I heard this verse said during a wedding ceremony, I couldn't help but think, did God really put them together? And I'm pretty sure we've been at ceremonies where we hear that and we're like, oh yes, amen, amen. But did God really put them together? Especially when you consider how some people are so quick to get married, only to get divorced just as quick, if not quicker, than they got married. In my family, there's an inside joke between me and my parents that if I ever forgot how old I am, all I need to do is to subtract 1 year from how long they've been married. My parents have been married for approximately 46 years. And in my opinion, they exemplify what happens when God truly joins two people together. Wow, 46 years. When I think about the 13 years I've been married to my wife, I sometimes feel that my wife and I are just scratching the surface in our marriage when it's compared to my parents. Now, I thought I knew the story of how my parents got together. But as I spoke to them, I found out there were some misconceptions. But I also was reminded of some interesting dynamics between my dad and mom. What therefore God has joined together, let no man put asunder. Therefore what God has joined together, let no man separate. The story of how Reggie Ivy and Jeanette Rogers were joined together began in the small Mississippi town of Shannon, Mississippi. Now, if you're not familiar with Shannon, Mississippi, don't feel bad. There's not many that are aware of Shannon, Mississippi. Shannon, Mississippi is approximately 11 miles south of Tupelo, Mississippi. Now, if you don't know where Tupelo, Mississippi is, I'm going to have to suggest that you just Google Shannon, Mississippi, Tupelo, Mississippi, and see where they are. Now, the first misconception that I had was that I always thought that my parents did not know each other until they moved to Milwaukee. This was not the case. Archie Lee Ivy, I know you're going to get me later for that. Archie Lee Ivy and Jeanette Rogers were both students at Shannon High School. Archie, who was in his senior year, is the oldest son of Mose and Ruby Ivy, and is the oldest of 9 children, 3 sisters, Ollie Mae, Mary, Mamie, and 4 brothers, Joe, Jack, Jesse, and O'Neill. Jeanette Rogers, in her freshman year, is the youngest daughter of Zach and Lereen Rogers, and is the youngest of 5 children, 3 brothers, Pete, Jimmy, Medford, also known as Mickey, and 1 sister, Maddie. On a side note, all of Jeanette's brothers and sisters will wind up moving to Milwaukee, while Archie was the only one in his family who decided to make the same move. This would play a role in bringing them together. Archie and Jeanette both grew up in the time of segregation, Jim Crow, the time where labeled facilities emphasized color as well as gender. When I asked my parents how they were able to deal with all that was going on at that time, they just simply said to me, we just did. However, they did both stress to me that they always carried themselves in a respectful manner and did not allow themselves to be intimidated by those who tried to demonstrate their racial superiority. As the story goes, Jeanette and her friends would, from time to time, playfully tease Archie and his friends and their girlfriends. But Archie didn't think too much about this little freshman girl who was making fun of him, at least not at that time. This brings me to the next interesting tidbit. There was a mutual person that played a role in God's plan in joining Archie and Jeanette together. that person would be Medford Rogers, one of Jeanette's brothers who happened to be a good friend with Archie, and who also I would later become known to me as Uncle Mickey. As we move forward in the story, Archie is now attending college at Jackson State University in Jackson, Mississippi, and Jeanette is in her final year at Shannon High School. Archie was home from college when he ran into Medford and asked him about how Jeanette was doing. I wasn't able to get the details of the conversation, but somehow it led to Archie contacting Jeanette and asking her out on a date. Now, when I heard this, my mind went quick to the assumption mode. Okay, he calls her, they go out on a date, love at first sight, happily ever after, right? Nope. As Archie was getting ready for his hot date, Carl Trouble threw a huge monkey wrench in his plan. In short, the date never happened, and Jeanette went on to attend Alcorn State in Longman, Mississippi, for 2 years before leaving her home at Shannon and moving to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. What therefore God has joined together, let not man put asunder. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate. For some divine reason, what didn't happen in Shannon, Mississippi, happened in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Archie and Jeanette both moved to Milwaukee because of job and career. Archie would become a teacher for Milwaukee Public Schools, and Jeanette would become an employee for Blue Cross Blue Shield. When Archie found out that Jeanette was in Milwaukee from his best friend who happened to see Jeanette in the store, he got in contact with her, and the date that didn't happen in Shannon happened in Milwaukee. About a year and a half of dating, Archie would give Jeanette a present. She opens the present only to find another present inside. She opens this present to only find another present. Eventually, she finds a small red box. As she opens it, she finds a ring. It's given a proposal, and as you can see, she said yes. What therefore God has put together, let not man put asunder. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate. So Archie and Jeanette would get married at her brother's home, who also moved to Milwaukee from Mississippi. And a year later, I would come into their life and bring them so much joy. But I digress. And in 6 years, my sister would come into the world and add to the joy, but not as much joy as I brought. But then again, I digress. This brings me to my last misconception. When talking to my parents about their marriage, I asked them, were we poor? The reason why I asked that question was because I looked at some old pictures of me and my sister growing up, and I looked at the different homes we lived in. 13th and Olive, 19th and Cortland, and finally 90th and Dogwood. But I wondered, between 13th and Olive and 19th and Cortland, were we poor? As they looked at me pondering the question, I couldn't help but notice the grins on both of their faces. And I got the feeling I was going to hear about how they came up poor in Mississippi, but I didn't. What they told me was that we have been pretty much a middle-class family, and together they worked hard so that my sisters and I had what we needed. The biggest thing I took away from that statement is that they worked together. They worked together. For 46 years, they worked together. God joined together two people who for 46 years worked together. What therefore God has joined together, let no man put asunder. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate. Thanks, Dad. Thanks, Mom, for allowing me to tell your story.